Hi, everybody. This is Chris Preimesberger, editor of eWEEK, and we're going to be talking with Zeus Kerravala today. Zeus is one of our writers at eWEEK, a longtime analyst in the networking and security field, one of the more respected people who does what he does in the world. Zeus, welcome. Thank you very much for being with me here today.
Thanks, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here. You can see I'm in my virtual data center here.
I love it.
Nice to see you in your home office with all your, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff back there.
I got a lot of stuff back there. I never go back and look at it. I'll have to see what's there. Anyway, VMware came up with some news this week that's kind of important in the networking area. Zeus, can you tell us the high level of what happened?
Yeah, so VMware announced some updates to its virtual cloud network, and what VCN is, for those who aren't familiar, it's a combination of what they're doing with SD-WAN and NSX. So from a VMware perspective, they're one of the few vendors that actually has technology that'll virtualize a data center, and they do that through NSX, which is was the acquisition of Icera. And then they also have their SD-WAN product, which they came from their acquisition of VeloCloud. And so most of the vendors out there play in one of the two domains. VMware plays in both, and they've tied the two together. So as a company, you can build a holistic virtualization strategy, data center all the way to WAN, which actually includes the cloud. And so that was it's a pretty interesting take for them, the whole concept of the virtual cloud network, and they announced some updates to it. Now, there were some notable parts to the updates. I think one of the most interesting pieces was what they're doing with 5G. So NSXT 3.0 for 5G. So NSXT is their network virtualization security platform. It now includes a number of new features like L3 EVPN, which is their Ethernet VPN. And what that allows you to do is move virtual machines around faster, allows you to do multicast routing. And where that gets used is with mobile operators. And so on the call, VMware did mention that 8 of the 10 largest telcos have now adopted NSX. And again, that's not their SD-WAN piece, that's the data center piece. Well, it's actually sort of core network as well. But what you can think of it as doing as NSXT lets you create an intelligent overlay on top of a 5G network that bridges the gap between the underlay and overlay. So for a mobile operator, they're able to then create different types of services without having to disrupt another one. So you run these things in these different virtual layers, and it runs a lot more efficiently. Another interesting feature was something called NSX Federation, which is, you can think of it as segmentation on steroids. So it's a fact, and nobody would disagree with that networks are fairly brittle today, and making changes is difficult, and it's hard to have to really protect your network as well. And so what NSX Federation does, it allows a customer to create specific segments in the network, or federated zones as they call it. And then if there's a breach in one of those, it protects the other ones. And so now if I want to be able to put all my IoT devices in one federated zone, I can do that. If I want to put all my, say, accounting workers in another one, I can do that. Or if I want to put one type of cloud traffic in another one. So I think with the increased adoption of cloud and the need to support digital transformation initiatives, something like NSX Federation can actually play a very key role in that. So that was, I think, a good update for them. They've also injected its IDS and IPS capabilities into VCN. And so NSX, they call it NSX Distributed IDS IPS. It takes the signatures, they're all application specific, and now it's embedded into the network versus running it as an overlay. And what that does is it actually creates a path to what Gartner's calling SASE, which I know in eWEEK we've written about quite a bit. And so the concept of SASE is that you have integrated networking in security that's delivered from the cloud. And so by injecting the threat protection into the network, they actually make that process easier. So there were some other updates in there, like they had some Kubernetes support, things like that. But I think the big takeaway from this, and there was actually one other piece I want to talk about, was the updates to Verni, which is their vRealize Network Insight product. They've actually brought in some AI capabilities into that. And so what's cool about that is Verni is great at helping network engineers find problems. And and that is the biggest problem of running networks today is troubleshooting, obviously. Network engineers are, all the ones I know, are really smart, right? Once you know where a problem is, you can fix it. But finding where that problem is can be very difficult, and Verni with AI capabilities lets you do that faster. What'll be interesting to see is how VMware marries Verni and Nyansa. So you probably saw in the news a couple of weeks ago, they bought this AI ops company called Nyansa that does a tremendous job of Wi-Fi troubleshooting. They're going to extend it to the WAN, but to me, down the road, Nyansa would become a data feed into Verni, and so that'll be kind of interesting to see. So, so that was the news. I think the big takeaway from this is that I think VMware, through all these different things, has finally legitimized itself as a networking vendor. And I think this is something they struggled with for a long time. When Pat Gelsinger, I remember the VM world where they announced NSX from the Nicira acquisition. Gelsinger was very aggressive. He talked a lot about how they're going to disrupt networking individuals. They're going to disrupt that whole industry. And it caused a lot of enemies with networking. So a lot of networking people didn't want to work with VMware. And but since then, they've played nice. They bought VeloCloud. They kept that brand around. And I think after this has been a long march for them, but I think VMware has finally legitimized itself as a networking vendor.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a hard time thinking of Pat Gelsinger as having enemies. He's such a nice guy, and he's one of the guys I really respect in this business, who knows all about different corners of this business. But
Pat is one of the nicest guys I've ever met. I think if Michael Dell ever retired, I'd like to see Pat run the whole company. I think Pat is a true gentleman. He's a nice guy. I just think the tack they took, their path to success with compute was to be aggressive and disrupt the whole market. I think the strategic mistake they made was realizing that server ops people and VMware engineers, they don't really know networking, and networking isn't as easy as people think. Networking's hard. You have to know a lot of stuff. And so they had to make nice with networking. And this sets up a very interesting competitive dynamic, moving forward with Cisco.
Yeah, that was my question. And wrapping it up, Zeus, how does this impact the market? How is Cisco going to respond to this, do you think?
Yeah, well, Cisco's in a similar position where they also have virtualization technology that lives in the data center and the WAN. They've created this umbrella category called intent-based networking. I know one of the things in the VCN release was they claimed to be the #1 SD-WAN vendor. I'll have to dig into those numbers a little bit because I do find it a little hard to believe. I know Cisco's got a bigger install base than anybody. In fact, I think they claim to have, 20,000 SD-WAN customers, which is far bigger than VMware's number, but you can count market share numbers however you want, I suppose. Especially this early in a market. But I think the thing for Cisco that'll be interesting to see with VMware is historically the market has been known as Cisco. The networking industry, as you know, used to be called Cisco and the Seven Dwarves, indicating that it was this big giant Cisco, and then you have all these little companies like 3Com and Nortel they competed with. And frankly, that wasn't very hard to compete with those guys, right? They just tried to survive. VMware is a company that brings a different approach to networking, right? And because they're trying to attack it now from the virtualization domain, and VMware is as beloved by their customers as Cisco is by theirs. And so it does create an interesting dynamic. The other thing to watch in networking too is it's no longer the Seven Dwarves. HP is $1 billion company. Extreme Networks is $1 billion company. Arista is, Juniper is, right? So for Cisco, it's a different market now. They're a very well-run organization. They're looking at disrupting the virtualization market with the work they're doing in containers too. So, but this clearly this VMware versus Cisco co-opetition that's going on, because they do partner together, is going to be fascinating to watch over the next few years. And it's going to be great for customers because it's going to drive each other to innovate, faster and faster. And that's really the benefit customers are going to get from this.
Great. Zeus, thank you very much for your time and expertise. I really appreciate it. And we'll be coming back to you as news comes up over the next weeks and months. Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
Okay, everybody, have a great eWEEK out there. Take care.
Safe.
Thanks for joining us on eWEEK eSPEAKS. Go to eWEEK.com to hear more conversations with IT thought leaders.